Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with my buddy Steve Cohen, but he's on vacation this time. Our special guest today is USF Don's two-time first team all WCC, Orlando Smart. Orlando, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, it's always fun to me. We had an opportunity to visit when we were in Phoenix, actually watching our Dons. Lost the first game to Grand Canyon, but had a huge win against Arizona State. I thought that was beautiful. It was great to see you.
Oh, definitely great. And me living in Texas, I mean, I watch them as much as I can on television, but I don't get to fly out there as much as I'd like. So anytime I get that opportunity, it's always great to see. And the program's doing wonderful. Coach Golden has a team going in the right direction. I'm very proud of them.
I do want to say this real quick. I didn't know. I got some Norman Rockwell up here, and I see you have some over there. That's really curious. As a matter of fact, I have that print.
Oh, really? Yeah. I love that.
This is really funny. We have a tendency to know our Dons and know our teammates, but we really don't know them. Let's talk about this. I want you to talk a little bit about where you grew up, and okay. Let's talk, tell me about mom and dad.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Austin, Texas. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, but my mother, she went to college in Austin. So that's how we ended up in Austin. She went to college, went back home for a little bit, and she just loved it. So, I mean, I lost my mom 15 years ago, but Austin, she made Austin her home. Dad was still in Kansas City, so I still had family in Kansas City, but I spent the majority of my time here in Austin growing up, going back there in the summers a little bit, not, till about maybe middle school, and I stopped kind of going back up there. But Austin is a great place to grow up, great place to live. And actually, the funny thing about it, when I chose to go to USF, you guys maybe, do you remember a guy named Ron Baxter? He played at the University of Texas. Have you ever heard that name? Because he is from the city. He's from San Francisco.
I'm not recalling that, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, he went to the University of Texas, and he played basketball back in the days when they had like Coach Ablin, LaSalle Thompson, guys like that played at UT. Johnny Moore, that played with the Spurs for a long time. So he played with those guys, and he's the first person that ever, when USF recruited me, because I used to watch their games, and he was the first person that even told me about USF, and he's like, that was a school he always wanted to go to growing up, actually.
That's amazing. On that note, I am curious about how you really started playing basketball. Talk about yourself in high school. What kind of kid were you in high school?
Well, I mean, like most, I thought I was a decent student, a good kid, just kind of quiet. I've always been kind of quiet. But we started playing basketball. To my knowledge, I can remember organizing like the second grade, watching, like I say, Johnny Moore, Magic Johnson. Those are the guys I looked up to. And, I can remember watching the tape delayed finals, in like Seattle Supersonics winning, I think was like 79. I was the type of kid that when I was like in elementary, third, fourth, second grade, whenever I had a bedtime, so I could watch the Monday night football highlights with Howard Cosell and those guys, and then I could go to bed after the highlights went off, back when they actually showed highlights and stuff at halftime, when you didn't see all the highlights like every 10 minutes like now. So
when you were in high school, did you have good teams, and who was your coach?
Well, my high school basketball coach, his name is Carl Cooks, and we had some decent teams in my district, I would say, because back in those days, Texas it still is a football state, but it was a very difficult, like nowadays, for instance, because my son, he probably just finished, he did just finish high school. He graduated 2 years ago, and I can probably name one or two guys that probably went Division I in the entire area. And one of them was a guy I coached. He's down at University of Houston, sophomore point guard. But back then, we probably had about, on our AAU team alone, I think we put like 10, 12 guys that went D1. And that's rare. That's rare for Austin. But we also all played at different schools. So we were all competing against one another. None of us played on the same team. But we probably had maybe 1 to 2 Division I players at the school at any given time, which for Austin, that's rare. You know, you don't have the times where you would have, these powerhouse schools that you talk about or you hear about. Here lately, they've had a few, but back then it was very competitive. Ray Jackson, the Fab Five, for instance, we were in the same district. We played against one another. Those games were standing room only games, things of that nature. I go to high school games, at least here in Austin, it's like just the family is there, it seems like, and a few students. Those games, you had to get there early. And we had guys going to Rice, all over the country. University, you had a couple guys go to the University of Texas. Just, it was fun times. We had some good players, but we weren't stacking the teams or anything like that. We wanted to beat each other. No transfers. Nobody was holding their kids back then on purpose. Red shirt in the 8th grade. We didn't do that. Just played.
So as you graduate from high school, how does a kid from Texas end up in San Francisco? Well,
back then, I believe we had our assistant coach at that time is the recruiter. His name is Gary Truesdale. We hit it off really well. I think he saw me playing at a tournament out in Lubbock, I believe. And back then, again, we never left the state of Texas to play basketball. Like how kids are flying all over the country now. We never had that experience coming from Texas, at least not from Austin. And he recruited me, and I wanted to go away from, get out of Austin. And Baylor, Baylor was one of the schools that recruited me. San Diego State and USF were the 3 that I really considered. There were a few others, but those are the teams that I really had a great time on my visit out to San Diego. Baylor was a little too close. Because I remember even on my recruiting trip, we went over to a local college. You know how you do on your recruiting trip. You go hang out a little bit. One of the first people that I saw in the dorms at that school is now my girlfriend at the time, but my sister-in-law. She was going to school down in Waco, so I was like, yeah, it's a little too close for home. I wanted to get out of here a little bit and see something different, see the world a little bit. So that's kind of how that went.
So who's the coach and who really got you there?
Like I said, Gary Truesdale was my recruiter, but Coach Jim Bravelli, one of our on my recruiting trip, actually, Coach Bravelli, he had a party out at his house. Wife, his daughter, his son Mike was there. Michelle's his daughter, and the entire team. And it was such a family atmosphere. I had such a great time on my recruiting trip, and it had nothing to do with I toured the school, of course, and you talk to professors and advisors. You hit it off with the teammate, but I think that's what kind of sealed the deal, just having that family atmosphere and going out to the house, because on my other recruiting trips, you just do the usual. You go hang out with the guys, you go to a couple parties and things like that, and that's kind of it. And then they tell you all these things that, may happen or may not happen, but I think they were the most honest. And then it was just that family atmosphere is what I think what really sealed the deal.
So give me your first impressions of your first practice with Coach Bravelli.
Well, one of the things was conditioning. So coming from high school, you do a little conditioning. And then, kids didn't lift weights as much. But I remember running. I remember we would run to Golden Gate Park, or we'd wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and we'd have to run. And that was something new for me. We had basketball period. Maybe after school, we did some running, and that was pretty much it. We weren't waking up at 5 in the morning. It's still dark outside and kind of cold, and running miles and then going circuit training. That was the most vivid thing that stood out to me was our conditioning as a freshman. And of course, coming from high school, I was in terrible. You think you're in good shape, but no, it's a big transition.
So talk about your first practice? What was that like? Once you got to the gym?
Oh, well, the basketball part was the fun part. That was, I mean, because I've always loved being in the gym. I've always looked forward and loved practice. So it was a good experience. I mean, at the time, I mean, we had a unique group. I thought we had a good recruiting class came in because, Daryl Johnson, for those that remember USF, I mean, he was a leading rebounder in the conference. I mean, he led the nation in junior college in rebounding, and Tim Owens was a top scorer in the conference, one of the top 2 or 3. And then it was Jason Boyes from Texas. So I had 4 guys that were from Texas. So we had that bond. We got along. I get along great with those guys. And then the returning guys, they were mostly California. So it was a little bit, I think, kind of the new guys versus the old guys type of feel, when we first got there. Ultimately, I think we forged those bonds, but that was my first impression, where it was kind of like the new guys versus the old guys.
So, so it's your senior year. You had a great career at school.
Thank you.
What are you thinking? Do you feel like you're going to continue to play, or if you're going to get drafted? So what are your thoughts as you're leaving school?
Well, as I'm leaving school, I didn't know. Oh, the only thing, well, I talked to a few scouts and agents that said that, hey, that you may be like a 2nd round pick or something like that. I didn't know because, not going through that process, or really just, having a school, like, since you guys were there, I mean, it's not like we were putting guys in the NBA year in and year out. So it'd been a drought. It's been a long drought as far as that goes. But I remember being over spring break, everybody left and went places. I stayed and worked out. I did everything that I could do to just keep myself in shape. So fortunately, Donnie Nelson, as a matter of fact, brought me into the Warriors at camp. And I was one of the last guy actually that was cut that year, but I had no idea what to expect. I was just playing and just working out, just trying to do everything that I could do to make myself viable in case I got the opportunity.
Well, you did end up playing. So talk about that. Where'd you go? And why did that happen?
Well, believe it again, Donnie Nelson, who obviously is Coach Don Nelson's son, but he's also assistant GM and GM with the Mavericks. I think he liked me as a player. We got to know one another, and he brought me in with Golden State, and I played pretty well in camp. But I still don't think, even going through it as a free agent, I still was kind of like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. I'm Chris Mullin. I see, Tim Hardaway, Latrell Sprewell. I mean, it still was kind of more of a wow moment, more so than like, hey. So I played well enough, but I don't think I played good enough to stay. So they actually had some scouts, and it was almost like, not like a placement, but they were still kind of behind the scenes working, trying to help me out so they could, keep me on the radar. And I actually ended up signing in Poland after that.
Wow. So how was that? I've never been there. So tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed myself. Played with some Americans. We did have some good teams over there. And then we traveled, we played in a thing called European Cup. So I was able to play against, 1 week I may have been in Spain, the next week in Greece, and the next week in Russia. It was always a home and home series. Played, Real Madrid, which is it's still a big team in Spain, Rockley's a Russian team. So it was really great. A lot of the players on the team spoke English, so the language barrier. I learned, it's been almost 30 years now, so I don't really but I could communicate a little back then. It's been a long time. But a lot of those guys, a coach spoke English. I had a couple really good players, actually. One of the guys played at Providence, and then a couple of other guys were trying to get scholarships to come to the United States. But even the training was different. So it's no surprise to me that we saw the influx of European players and their skill set, because these guys their normal routine was to have 2-a-day practices and skill work and getting a lot of shots up and things that even kids growing up here in the United States, there's more skill work now. But when I was a kid, we played every day. It wasn't a lot of, hey, let's go and work out. And let's go work on this aspect. But we played like constantly. And then there was a few times where we'd work on driven, work on shooting, but it was more about playing back then. When I went over there, I saw the benefit of just training.
Talk about your coach and talk about what a normal practice is. You talk about two-a-days.
Okay.
What's your coaches then?
Oh, you know, there was a couple different coaches, but I couldn't pronounce the last name too well. I just hate coach.
Just call him coach.
Yeah, just call him
coach.
They were or Polish names like Borchevich or something like that. But but the practices were always in the morning. We would a lot of skill work, weights, skill work, ball handling, a lot of shooting, lift weights, conditioning. That was always our morning practices, and then the evening was the team practice where we're scrimmaging, we're plays, and that's pretty much all season long. So you get there late August, I guess, maybe get home in April, something like that, and that's pretty much all year. They don't take a lot of time off. It's practices. I mean, 'cause I remember even my first year over there, the coach was pretty hard, and some of the players that were there, they didn't like the hard training, the two-a-days. They wanted more time off, and it was a little bit of an issue. But I was like, I'm used to this training and stuff now, after going through it in college. Now, high school might have been I might not have, it was a transition, but and that was from the beginning of the year, like in camp, all the way through the playoffs and everything.
So how long were you in Poland?
So I spent, once I left USF, so I played overseas for about 4 years.
Oh, wow. I did not know.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened after Poland?
So while in Poland, my youngest son, my oldest son was born. I came home for Christmas, and my wife, now she actually went into labor. So I was fortunate enough to be home for that. And so I have a daughter now, I have a son. So I thought that was my last year. So 97, I was pretty much decided, think about when you're 23, even 30 seems old at that time. It was guys over there that were older than me. Like, I don't know if you remember Jarvis Bass Knight from UNLV. Yeah. He was over there playing, and Antoine Jobert from Michigan. All these guys over there. And there was other guys over there too. But I was like, man, that guy's 32 and his family's here. And I didn't know how young 32 really was until you turn 50. So I just thought at that time it was a good time for me. I experienced it, but it was a good time to start the second act. And that's when I decided to go ahead and come back. And I didn't start law enforcement, but I was always in the summer doing things that was pseudo law enforcement. I was working with children. I was a detention officer, things that would start my career as far as law enforcement, just always having that was always the backup to basketball.
So what got you into that? Is just something that you always liked or thought about, or?
Yeah. I think looking back, I think it was something that was always there, because even like the brief stint that I did, like being in camp with the Warriors all through preseason and everything, the guys that were administering the drug test were actually retired FBI agents. So I actually kept in contact with them a little bit, because that was, I believed at the time I wanted to go FBI or CIA, but once I started a family, because I actually even have an FBI agent, a friend that I grew up with here in Austin, and she's still with the FBI, and it was a little bit of recruitment there, but she was living in all these different places. She's back here in Austin now, and I had already traveled the world. I had moved around, so that wasn't appealing to me anymore. For them to say like, "Hey, you have to go live in El Paso, or you have to go to Bismarck, North Dakota," I'm living here in Austin. So I decided at that point not to pursue that, but I still pursued law enforcement as a career.
So now that you're there, tell me about that. What kind of training does that require, and where did you want to end up?
Well, the training's extensive. I'm with the Austin Police Department, and I'm a lieutenant in the Austin Police Department. But so my ultimate goal was actually, to be honest with you, initially is to be a detective, because I just wanted to the investigation aspect of law enforcement is what drew me into it. Now I've gone beyond that. I've promoted to sergeant, now lieutenant, but that was actually what intrigued me about it. Just investigations, the just, finding the evidence, not in 30 minutes like the TV show do. Like we solve the crime in 30 minutes or to an hour, like people think.
Well, sometimes you get 48.
Yeah, or that, yeah. Because people think we're going to do satellite imaging and we're going to find a footprint in the snow from someone who stole their bike. I mean, it's not like that, but it's definitely rewarding. It's always interesting, always ever changing, and it's definitely a challenge, but something that I don't regret. And I'm actually very, very pleased with the decision to go this route.
So now you're still working for I want to get this right, Sheriff, Police.
It's actually the City of Austin Police Department.
City of Austin.
Yes.
So, it's always interesting to me because there's so much going on with crime, homeless, drugs. Give me two really big issues that I should know, just as a layman walking around, because seemingly if you turn TV on, everything's a nightmare. But tell me what's really important.
Well, one thing that I think that's important is, like, when we would do safety presentations and things, just being aware of your surroundings. Crime has risen. Being aware of your surroundings. I mean, you hear cliche things like you see something, say something. Those are always important. But I also tell people, like, especially when we talk to kids, I did just recently, we did an outreach at a local high school that we were trying to do. And it's not to downplay any of the injustices that you see or any of the police reform that's needed, because I truly believe that a lot of the reform is needed, and I do like that. And I do like the way that people, speak out on any type of misconduct by police. However, it's not as rampant as people would, perceive it because of the news, because out of the multiple, in any time, any one incident is too many. That's the first thing. Any one wrongdoing is one too many. But I've just see so many good things that happen. For instance, for anyone listening, if anyone's keeping track with the news, here in June, we had a big mass shooting in downtown Austin. It was in our biggest entertainment district called 6th Street. And anyone who's been to Austin, most people say, oh, I've heard of 6th Street before. And where like 14 people got shot. One person died. And I saw officers run. All they did was hear the shots and they ran. They didn't think about, taking cover. Their first deal was to go stop the shooting and save lives. And I saw them putting tourniquets on people. I saw them, carrying people that were injured out to ambulances because of the crowds that couldn't get into the fact. So, I mean, I think most people that get into that profession are there to do good and do a good job, and they do it for the right reasons. Unfortunately, there are, instances that do happen that are very unfortunate that we've seen way too many times, especially now in the event with all the phone and videos and things. But I mean, I see guys almost every day doing things to save other people's lives and putting themselves second. So that's what I would tell people. It's unfortunate, but these guys are really out here trying to do a good job.
So what do you think you could do because that image obviously is out there, and obviously crime's up because of the pandemic. There's a lot more desperate folks out there who just basically need help. So what do you think you can do, or people can do, to make everything better?
Well, I think we've got to continue to build bridges. I mean, people talk about community policing, but I don't think that people truly understand that it's a partnership with the community and the police department, because a lot of people, it's not the onus is not only on the community, it's not only the onus is only on the officers. I think that especially a patrol officer, I mean, you should get out of your vehicle, you should talk, you should get to know the people in which you serve. I think that's lost because a lot of times a lot of times guys are just driving, they don't even have their windows down, things like that, getting to know where they, go up to people and have a pleasant conversation with the community. Because oftentimes, most people, when they're come in contact with police, is always in crisis. It's always something bad that's happened. So I try to do things like, even when I was a patrol officer, and I mean, I still do outreach now, but it's just a different capacity because, I'm more of an administrator. But even when I was on patrol, for instance, in my area, when I was a patrol officer, I would go in the local rec center. I've gone to kids' basketball practice, a game, or just, and they would see me at this practice, but they would also see me at their game supporting them. I played basketball with some of the kids and things of that nature, so they don't see me in just that light in a negative way. So that's why. So I think it's a two-way street. We must do, officers and the police department must do better for outreach and building those bridges, but also think that we shouldn't try not to have a negative perception, because it's okay to interact and talk with police officers, because sometimes when we bring that negative energy and then a citizen brings a negative energy, it's not always a positive outcome. And I think we could change some of the outcomes just in our interaction. And man, I actually think that's a small step we can do, because it doesn't take much to just treat people with respect and dignity at all times, whether it's a suspect or just someone's grandmother at the grocery store.
I agree. Definitely agree. So, I mean, you're still pretty young. So how much longer, what's longer you're going to keep working?
Well, I have maybe about 6 years or so. I don't know for sure, because, we talk about it all the time about, you don't think about retirement, obviously, in your 20s, but now when you get to that 50s mark, you start thinking about when I will retire, what the quality of life will be. And right now, everything's going pretty well. I'm still enjoying it. And I don't think I'll work past 60, but hey, who knows? I see people doing it all the time. They leave and they go work somewhere else because, it just keeps you going, keeps you moving. I just got into golf. So maybe
that's what I heard.
I just got into golf. I've been trying to play about once a week for the last 4 or 5 months. So prior to that, I was like, I don't play golf. It's not fun. I'll go once a year just to hang out or something. But I actually like it now. We do a little fellowship where they just started back for the pandemic. So I don't play basketball much, but it's like a little fellowship. It's like a little older guys, and we try to get some young guys in. Someone always, gives some sort of encouraging words to the young men before we play. We try to network, whether, some guys are falling on hard times. Some of these guys are still kind of out, kind of cause some trouble out on the street a little bit. Some guys are just looking for jobs and opportunities. So we try to provide that for them, and try and have so we're just doing things like that just to trying to make their lives better. And then in tune, I think, by us giving back for just like people did for us.
Awesome. Yeah, that's okay. I'm not a retirement guy either. I definitely got to get out of the house. Hey, talk about your family.
Oh, okay. Well, I have 3 children. My daughter, she's the oldest. She works in IT with the state of Texas. I have my 2 younger kids. They're in college. One down at University of Texas, San Antonio. He's a sophomore in college. And I have a senior in college at Texas State, which is San Marcos, which is right in between Austin and San Antonio. So 2 college, and then I actually have a granddaughter who's 11, just got home from volleyball camp. And then I've been married now for 20 plus years. So yeah, and but I've known my wife since high school. So we've grown up together.
Well, that's very impressive. Orlando, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I really admire, because you are making a big difference, in your city, in the world, bringing people together. That's really admirable. So I really respect that. And hopefully, through our Dons, as we're now 11-1, we'll continue to stay in touch, and I'll look forward to that. And maybe play some golf. We got the Olympic Club over here. Come on
Oh
down.
yeah, I would love to do that. And like I was telling them out there, they need to schedule. I need them to schedule some of these Texas teams. We have UT Austin right here. University of Houston's doing well. I mean, we not get these Dons in the state of Texas, so it'd be easier for me to come check out a game.
Yeah, hey, I'm pretty sure that we're open to that. I think that they're more afraid of us than we are of them. So we're definitely open to that. But thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with you.
I look forward to it, and I really appreciate you. Thank you for the invite. It's always great to see you, and I agree with you. Go Dons this year.